Hey, good morning. It's Friday, April 4th, and I'm making a video for my dad. This is just for my dad to give him the fishing report. I usually call him as soon as I'm finished fishing and I give him the whole report. But today, dad had mouth surgery and he wasn't in the mood to talk, so he can watch this as soon as he gets it. And one thing I'm going to do differently than what you see on a lot of fishing reports, so they're make general statements about fishing conditions, but I'm going to do the specifics. I'm going to show you where I went and exactly what I did and what I caught. So let's dive in here. I went to Bishop's Harbor, and here off of I go up 41 there and go to Bishop's Harbor. It's on the south side of Tampa Bay. Let me zoom out here a little bit. So here's a Skyway Bridge, and here's Bishop's Harbor right here. And as I zoom in, this is the launch. I come down to Bishop Harbor Road. Okay, let's zoom in right here. All right, so here's the boat launch, and I usually park over here and launch my kayak right there. And I'll cross the road over here. I have a 10-foot cast net, and I come into this little waterway that's coming under the bridge, and the tide was incoming this morning. I have a 10-foot cast net, and I threw it out there, and it was one and done. I got a lot of white bait and small pinfish. So the white baits were small, between like 1 and 2 inches, and as well as a pinfish. So most of them were smaller. There's probably a dozen that were 2 inches, and there might have been two or three, probably 3 dozen or 4 dozen even that were 1 inch. So I put the whole thing in my bucket and I put it all in my bait shark, and I had a ton of bait this morning. One thing when I'm planning a trip, well, today was off and I wanted to go fishing, and I woke up a little bit late. But let's look at the plan for the trip. I always go to Tides for Fishing, and I'm looking at Port Manatee, which is the closest uh, location to Bishop Harbor where I can get tide information. But I love Tides for Fishing, and I look down here. You can see I've clicked on Friday the 4th. And here's what I'm looking for. Gives you all kinds of information, but what I'm essentially looking for is this: the fish symbol, or little fish, or a lot of fish, or what's going on. That's one thing. The other thing is I got an incoming tide, and I've got solunars hitting right at dawn in the morning. So really good fishing conditions. Dawn is set with 7:16 a.m. at this location this morning, and I got on the water a little late. I didn't even leave my house till 7:15, but what I normally do is leave my house so that I'm arriving at the launch about 40 to 45 minutes before sunrise. And the reason I'm doing that is that if there are finger mullet, this is my best bait catching trick. If there's finger mullet available, if you can cast your cast net while it's still dark and they can't see the net, then you have a really good chance of nailing some finger mullet. I got out there late this morning. That's one thing. The other thing is that if the bite is going to be around that time, that solunar time, and we'll look down a little bit lower. I want to be out there, catch my bait, and then paddle out to the spot and be on the spot at 7:16 a.m. or before, in this case, a little bit before. So I got a late start this morning, but so be it. That's one thing. Let me just look at the bottom. I'll just scroll down and see the bottom. This is useful. Like, you can go down the calendar and kind of see how things are progressing throughout the month. For me, this always says that there's good high fish activity during the full moon. I find that the full moon for me is terrible. But the new moon, this is like Monday the 28th for me. This Monday, Tuesday is going to be, or Saturday. I don't fish on Sunday, but this weekend right here, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday for new moon will be the best fishing of the month in April inshore. All right, so let's look down a little bit further. And here's the actual major period they were showing with the multiple fish symbol, but they're summarizing for you here, and you can see that it's 6:10 a.m. to 8:10 a.m. So I got out there at 7:15, so I was a little bit late. If I had gotten out there, per the plan, um, I would have been on the right there at the feeding time. So one of the things that's great about that is that if you kind of understand and know the patterns, tomorrow this is going to be a little bit later. So say I want to go tomorrow morning. Let's click on Saturday the 5th. So you just note this in your head. There's 6:10 a.m. I'm going to go Saturday the 5th. All right, let's look at what's happening here. So Saturday, tomorrow, is not going to be significantly different than today. And what you'll find is that everything clocks forward about 40 minutes. And so the bite is going to start 40 minutes later tomorrow morning than it did this morning. So you can see it, you kind of see it here visually, but let's again scroll all the way down to the bottom and let's see how accurate I was on my guess if I got this. Okay. We said 6:10, this is 7:09, so it's actually an hour later is what the best salooners are predicting. One of the things about that is that you could, if you say you're going to fish on Saturday, one of the things you can do is go out and do a scouting trip on Friday. And if you go a scouting trip on Friday early in the morning and kind of see where the activity is, I usually don't have enough discipline. I'm still going to throw something, but you could scout things in the morning the day before, and then the next day that you go out, you understand that wherever you're going to find the fish in roughly the same places as they were yesterday, and things are going to start happening about an hour later. So you can really dial it in and get yourself a fantastic fishing trip, and if you use this and plan that out. So let's talk about another part of the plan here, which is the wind. You can see the wind here is showing 13 miles an hour at 8 a.m., which is pretty stiff on a kayak. Usually like 15 is the max, but because I'm going to Bishop's Harbor and there's a lot of protected area, or at least I can find a protected area. I might have to paddle through some wind, but I can find a protected area. But you can see by like 11 a.m. it says 14. Well, I'll tell you, I was out there and it was more like 20 on the way back. Paddled all the way out. Let's see, let's dial in Bishop's Harbor on a wind finder. Again, I launched here and I paddled all the way out here. Now you see this wind direction, it's all going up through here. So what I did was paddled all the way out to the mouth of Bishop's Harbor, rounded this corner, and then I found here, I'm in the lee of this little peninsula. So I found some area that I could fish that I wasn't in the wind. I had a great thing happen this morning. This was so fun. Right as I rounded this corner, there was another kayak fisherman out there using artificials, and he was coming back. And I'm talking to him, and I said, I asked him, how's it going? I was like, hey, both of us are saying all the same old things. It's better than going to work. So we're enjoying the beautiful weather out there. And just as I'm talking to him, I had a nice big white bait, well, at least a 2-inch white bait. And as I'm talking to him, I had pitched it up against the mangroves, and I hooked up with a little 20-inch snook. I did not get a picture of the snook, but even the other guy observed is like, isn't that a great feeling when you hook up and catch a fish right in front of somebody else? Yeah, it was great. I made my day. It was really a fun interaction on the water. All right, so let's look back over to Google Maps, and I'm going to tell you exactly what I did, where I caught the fish. Okay, I told you that I had the whitebait. I had a ton of whitebait, and most of it was really small. Some of them were 2 inches. I don't think I had a single whitebait over 3 inches. I paddled all the way out here. I put the bait shark in the water, left it in the water. I paddled all the way out here. The wind was assisting me on the way out, right? Here, the first thing I did is between this little island here. The wind was kind of, you saw it over on the wind finder, the wind is blowing in this direction, right? So here I paddled up close to this island, I pitched the bait out, and then I just drifted with the wind. And long about right around in here, I got a nice hit, but then he spit the hook. So it's probably a trout, 99% likely a trout, a gator trout. And then I anchored there a little bit and tried, but nothing. So the wind was already pretty stiff. So I continued on around the island here, or not the island, but the peninsula, the mouth of Bishop's Harbor. right here, I was out of the wind. So somewhere along here, out of the wind, and I pitched the biggest white bait that I had up against the mangroves. I'm always looking for redfish, but I knew that snook was probably a more likely possibility. I was working my way down this edge looking for redfish, and that's when I encountered the other kayak fishermen and ended up hooking up and landing about a 20-inch snook. All right, so I made my way along here. At some point, I moved out on the flats a little bit, and I switched over to a rattle cork, like I got a green, like a Cajun Thunder or rattle cork, and with probably 18-inch leader on there, and I put a little pinfish on, and the first fish that I caught, I started drifting across this area, and the first fish I caught was a nice little flounder, so about 12 inches. I did not keep the flounder. Now, as I moved away from this edge, the wind started picking up. So right along the edge, it was blocked. But as I got further away, the wind started picking up, and I started drifting pretty quickly out here. So what I did was, I don't know if you can kind of make it out here. This whole area is just covered with grass and potholes. And the fish like to, in my experience, fishing a pothole or the edge of a pothole will transition from grass to sand or sand to grass. That edge transition is always really productive for me. So what I began to do, since remember that wind direction's coming from this direction going this way, I started anchoring, and then I would put the rattle cork on there, and I started pitching into those potholes. So I had so much bait. I mean, I probably had 50 baits in there, and most of them were an inch long, that I'd go in front of a pothole and I would grab a handful and just live chum it. When you do that, you just like, I don't even bother cutting them up. I grab a handful of the little ones, give them a little squeeze to kind of mess them up a little bit, I guess, and then pitch them in the water. And the fish like that. There's like they key in on electromagnetic signals, and when those things are twitching in, I think it kind of helps stir up the bait. So what I started encountering was, as I was going across these these potholes, I was anchored, and then I'm pitching in this direction. Of course, I had an enormously long cast range because of the wind at my back, right? And so it's pitching, and then using the rattle cork, and I'd get one hit on a pothole, and I'd get a hit on maybe a 2-inch whitebait or a 2-inch pinfish, and then it would spit the hook, and then nothing. And so then I moved a little bit. I started moving back towards the mouth. I moved back towards the mouth until I was not, until I wasn't overlapping the last sweep that I had made, and then did it again. And every time I stopped, I'd stop in front of one of these potholes, and I would live chum it for a minute or two, and then I would throw it out. So I ended up hooking up on this beautiful, let me see if I can pull up the picture, beautiful 20-inch trout, gorgeous fat 20-inch trout. And ultimately I was finished fishing, and I pitched my bait and paddled all the way back, and man, it was a hard paddle into that wind, so I got my exercise for the day. All right, Grandpa Jim, that is the fishing report. Now, one of the things I wanted to mention, and this to me is interesting, I had 2 trout, a 20-inch and a 17-inch. I got them back to my house and cleaned the fish. And as I'm cleaning the fish, I opened the bellies, and both of them were empty except for the one fish that I had, the bait fish. So both of them just had the one bait in their belly. So the trout out there were hungry. And I was after the optimum time. So I think tomorrow morning, April 5th in Bishop Harbor, or maybe in those flats outside of Bishop Harbor, is going to be amazing. If you see this video and get a chance, definitely go for it. One last, comment again. I use my product, the Bait Shark. I love the Bait Shark. I had something like 50 fish in there. I was live chumming handfuls of fish into these potholes, right? Handfuls of live bait. And that I caught all in one cast. And I'm not the best with a 10-foot cast net, but it was good enough. There was ton of bait, and when I was finished, I threw live baits back. I mean, I dumped live baits, the rest of what I didn't use back in the ocean, and they were all still alive. So I hope everyone has enjoyed this, but especially my dad. Dad, get well soon. I will see you very soon. Love you. Bye.